Ease of doing business was quite a big idea under the last administration in Nigeria. Now, the government of the day went to great lengths to mobilize operators across multiple sectors as it looked up to open up new channels of communication with partners home and abroad, while improving the statics and services at major points of entry into the country. Now, a few years down the line, the ease of doing business mantra seems to still be dealing with most of the all too familiar challenges. Joining us now to x-ray possible ways of tackling those hindrances to ease of doing business in Nigeria is barrister Omoruyi Edoigiawerie, lawyer and advocate for innovation and entrepreneurship. So good to have you on Newsday as always.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure.
So, how would you rate prospect for doing business in Nigeria initially, first, and what are the immediate challenges regarding the ease of doing business, you think?
Well, I think that we're well on our way. The issue is the pace at which we're going and how much progress we're making for the level of talk we've put into the conversation. Business is very key to an economy, and if you look at our economy today and the challenges that we face, the ease of doing business is not too far flung from the stake. And so what are the things that we need to do when you talk about ease of doing business? How easy is it for citizens, residents to do business, and how easy is it for foreigners to come into your economy to do business? We are having Naira challenges, FX volatility, and Naira volatility and FX unavailabilities. One way of doing that is attracting foreign exchange. One way of attracting foreign exchange is to create an ease through which foreign businesses can invest and deal with Nigeria. So what are our challenges? Some of our challenges still have to do with the digitization of the process and streamlining certain processes. Last time I was here, one of the things I pointed out was that when you look at the Business Facilitation Act, right, it tries to collapse some of these processes into a seamless, symbiotic approach where you do not have fragmented regulatory oversights, but government is seen as a singular entity, and all aspects of it are subsumed into that entity to provide that ease of doing business. But is that the case today? I do not think that we're there yet. And I think that, part of the challenge is an internal understanding, internal now from the angle of the civil service, government workforce, and the inability to bring all these agencies of government together to be on the same page, right? And it's a key challenge that must be worked on. And then remember, we have stratas. You have the federal, you have the states, and you have the local government. So when you talk about ease of doing business at the federal level, you also need to come back and look at the state level, right? There's the exclusive list, there's the concurrent, and there's the residual list. And what this means, and under the Constitution, is that each level of government have specifics that are specific to them, right? So even if you achieve some measure of ease, for instance, one thing that we must commend PEBEC and the federal government, for pushing for is the digitization of company registration, right? There were times in this country where it took you over a year to register a company, right? And over 6 months to even get a name approval. And this you can do in 24 hours, 48 hours. You can even start a process and finish in 24 hours, right? So there's some measure of improvement. But then you come down to the states and you find that, it's not, they're not singing the same song, right? There is that gap between, what you seem to see in that digitized space with the realities you have on ground. Businesses don't live, there's nowhere called federal government. Businesses reside in the states and deal more with the states and local governments, right? They reside in the states, and if you zero it down, they stay in local governments, right? And each of these levels of government have roles to play. So when you look at, for instance, business permit regulations, the state taxes that affect businesses, you look at the ease of getting certain licenses to operate locally and even at the federal level, some of these bottlenecks are still there. Right? So even though CAC has done well, if you even still look at the federal level, you still find that there are still other agencies or other aspects where there are still problematic approaches to getting licenses and approval. So what does this say? There needs to be an improved digitization of the process. You know, throw it open, digitize it. Look, we're in the technological era, and if you really are not leveraging on technology to provide any solution, you're not serious, right? So even though there is that push and there appears to be that will, execution is still a bit haphazard, and the workforce do not really understand the intricate necessities of moving technologically. And if you look at the civil service, right, one of the biggest challenges and the albatross that they have had over time is the fact that they understand and they operate in a bureaucratic environment where there are procedures and you follow this, you do this, you don't jump certain things and all that. Now, why that has its own benefits, you now have to create a marriage between these bureaucratic procedures and technological improvements, right? If we don't digitize our processes, right, we will not have the level of ease that we really should have, because you work with startups in the fintech space. One of the biggest challenges you have are getting approvals and licenses for whether it is payment processing licenses, whether it's digital bank licenses, and the likes. And that's because they're still caught up with these bureaucratic challenges that, you know, are present. And so what you have is oftentimes people who have gone through that hurdle of getting the licenses, but maybe not having the resources that they have to push, are now forced to bring in collaborative partners to work with to activate. But the fact remains that we have started, but we are definitely not where we need to be. And we have an infrastructure deficit. And that infrastructure deficit is in three phases, right? You have security infrastructure, you have digital infrastructure, and you have energy and power, right? And then a fourth, you have the transportation challenges, road network and interconnectivity. But when you know, even though security is not an indicator, express indicator in the indicators, but it's pivotal, right? Because you really want a situation where people can operate in a safe environment, right? And if I say to you, Ni and Sheito, come over to my house for lunch, and you know that on your way to my house, you probably meet people who will break your head. You won't come, no matter how enticing my house is, and no matter how sweet the food my wife cooks is. You will probably ask me to pack it and bring it off. Yes, I'll send the dispatch who's going to wear a helmet, right? But that's a key challenge. And if we really don't look at these things, we'll find ourselves cherry-picking solutions. We've got to look at security as a fundamental indicator in improving the ease of doing business, not just for foreign investors, but even locally, right? What's the ease? We had a situation where people could travel from Lagos to the north, from Lagos to the east, you know, and even on short notice for business measures. But do you have that today? You don't have that. Right, you've got to now start thinking. I was shocked. Right, I'm still not certain if that's an official publication from the NYSC or if it is just a meme on Twitter. You know, to see an advisory, right, saying to call members, if you're traveling to particular destinations, make sure you call people at home and ask them to keep some monies in the event that you're kidnapped and ransom needs to be paid. But you know, that is some of the realities that we face. And if we really don't see fixing security as pivotal to improving the ease of doing business, then we will not be entirely honest with ourselves, right? And this is why we need to now be even a bit ingenious with our approach to security, right? Maybe it's time to really look more at community and state policing. Maybe it's time to be a bit more ingenious with the federal nature of policing and now see how community and state policing can be a buffer to it, right? And then you look at our digital infrastructure. We still have an internet connectivity challenge. And until you fix this challenge, digitizing processes may be a mirage. Because I'll tell you for one, right? You can digitize all you want. If I don't have internet connectivity where I am, I cannot access that digitization, right? And I cannot get that license. While it may work for people in foreign investors, but locally, that may be a challenge for people to be able to plow in. We also have a knowledge gap, right? Even in that digitizing framework, we have a knowledge gap. How many people really even understand how to plow in and get these things done. I have said something before. I've said, look, the knowledge deficit we have are profiting quacks and people who don't have that knowledge, because they are selling false or incomplete or inchoate information to the consuming public who are buying it and investing in it. And the only way to attack this quack industry is to ensure that you bridge the knowledge gap. Take knowledge to where you should take it to. Go to all the areas and make sure that you improve access to information, especially when it comes to doing business. Issues like tax, for instance. Many people are still very unclear as to how to go about their tax filings, and as much as FIRS has done to digitize the process, that information gap remains there. And then what do you now find? People now selling wrong information, relying on the misinformation that they are providing to reap innocent businesses of their resources, right? So that's one thing that has to be fixed. Internet connectivity, we've got to fix that. We've got to get it better, improve access, to internet and ensure that people know and can access these things and are now able to plow and digitize their businesses. Technology is the way to go. It doesn't give you an option not to come in. You gotta get it or it crushes you. And what is happening is that our businesses are being crushed today because of that knowledge deficit in that space. And then you look at our road network, right? We have a challenge with interconnectivity. And if we do not fix that also, it's going to affect indigenous approaches to business. It's going to affect also people who are coming in to do business in our locations, right? People want to come into your country and they want to be able to go from one state to the other. They want to be able to move, beyond security. You want to have, good road network. You want to have good transportation access.
Very good, Omoruyi.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
You have, you've given quite a broad, view of what the issues are. And, one of the things on my list as well was even electricity and power supply. But access to capital and credit is something that you haven't necessarily touched on. How effective have existing financial programs been in supporting entrepreneurs? And what, improvements or innovations are being considered, or do you think should be considered to enhance access to capital for business ventures?
So today, what's the interest ratio today? 18.75%. How does that help indigenous businesses grow? Now, I was going to come to access to credit, and I knew I was going to spend a lot of time talking about it, so I decided to talk about the other spot before we come to credit. Any economy that wants to grow must ensure that there is access to credit.
Yes.
If you don't have access to credit, you're playing. If your entrepreneurs don't have easy access to credit, what you have would be a fledgling economy. Now, what's our credit system ratio in Nigeria? Literally non-existent, right? And that's because we have not worked intentionally to create a system. I just said to you, 18.75. In 2020, it was 11.5. 2021, 11.5. 2022, it went to 13.5, from 13.5, 16, before you know it, now we're in 18.75. What this means is that it's more expensive to access funds. So what do we have today? You have entrepreneurs and businesses that are surviving based on bootstrapping, government grants, and savings. Now this will help, but this will not boost astronomically our economic entrepreneurial growth, especially in place of manufacturing and all that. And Manufacturers Association of Nigeria came out clearly to say, look, interests are becoming stifling, so we will not borrow. And if we don't borrow, we will not be able to manufacture. If we don't manufacture, indigenous production will fail. So we've got to now, first of all, create a credit system. And, the problem is government continues to see the technology and innovation ecosystem as outsiders in the journey of transformation, as against collaborative partners. Sit down with these techpreneurs who understand the use of technology and artificial intelligence and the likes, and let them work out frameworks that government can use to improve the process and create an access to credit system, right? While there are challenges of inflation, which clearly, increasing, they will tell you that if you increase interest rate, you are trying to reduce the amount of money in circulation and all that. But that conversation really should not come to play here, because we really are in a dire situation where indigenous production and access to credit is at its lowest in a very long time.
Very good. And on that note, we'll have to end it here because we're fast running out of time, and we could talk more about this. Omoruyi Edoigiawerie, lawyer, advocate for innovation and entrepreneurship. As always, good to have you with us on the show.
Thank you for having me.